Always happy to have this next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He is a veteran alumnus of the show, if you will. We've done it in this fashion through video. We've even done in person at the show, specifically the National. And I'm talking none other than Tim Virgilio, Signatures for Soldiers. Welcome back, as always, Tim.
Thanks, John. Great to see you as always.
Yeah, and listen, I love what you're doing. As do a lot of people. How long's it been now? I'm losing track myself. There'd be a time I could tell you, and now I don't even. I don't
I,
even.
I think I'm losing track as well, my friend. No, it's actually next month, November, will be 11 years.
Wow, God bless you, and
Yeah.
and all the great work you're doing, which we're obviously going to talk about. Speaking of November, that'll be 7 years of this show, and
I, I
just
was gonna,
crazy. We're both
I,
at the T.
yeah, I was gonna say quite the impressive intro there. I need to talk to your graphics guy.
Yeah, yeah, that's not me. That was freelanced out. I'm not going to take any credit. I can't
No,
draw stick
it's nice.
figure, Tim, so I'm sure he's not doing stuff like that. But thank God there's people who know what they're doing
Yeah.
that can fill in those gaps. And speaking of knowing what you're doing, 11 years, and obviously you're further ahead today than when like we've talked before. When you first started the organization, you had a goal raising $500.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're well past that now into the six figure range. Last time I knew, I mean, just obviously when you start with a smaller goal like that, and then where you are now. I mean, just talk about sort of the evolution. Like, did you imagine that you'd be where you are today with Signatures for Soldiers?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you know this. We've talked about this time and time again. It started November of 2014, and kind of started to take my passion, of collecting autographs and merging it with my passion to help veterans and reaching out to athletes, asking them if they would sign a couple cards. I'd sell the cards for a couple dollars a piece. And then the money would go to a charity to help homeless and disabled veterans. And, the goal, like you said, the goal was $500. And, at that time, I mean, I didn't even have a name to it. I didn't have a logo to it. It was just one of these things of, let me just raise the $500, donate it to the charity, and call it a day. And I figured it would take a little while to do, because I was only selling, two, three, four, $5 autographs. I mean, it wasn't anything huge. And my God, 11 years later, this thing is just taken off. Now I'm kind of all branded up. Got the name, got the logo, got T-shirts, got hats. Get invited to the nationals and every year since 2018. So this year was what, year five, because COVID year was canceled. So um, yeah, it's been, the evolution is just, it's been more than I can ever ever have imagined. It's has been very grassroots effort. A lot of people in the hobby have gotten behind it. Collectors, dealers, companies. Um, it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and I think the thing that really I'm most proud of, and my wife and I talk about this, is um, Signatures for Soldiers has become more than just a vehicle to generate money to help homeless and disabled veterans. It's become a community, and there's people I've become like yourself, that I've become extremely good friends with, that I probably would have never have crossed paths with if I wasn't doing this. And you know, my wife and I genuinely believe that people want to help. They just sometimes, well, I think there's two things that stop them. from helping. One is they don't think that what they can give will really make a difference, so they don't give. And then the other is they just don't know how to help. And I think Signatures for Soldiers has become a vehicle for both. Right now we're sitting at, since I started this, we're sitting at over $450,000 raised. And that's literally been, I mean, you've seen it firsthand. It's literally been, you know, two, three, $4, $5 at a time, and it adds up really quickly. It's amazing. It's yeah, I'm just speechless. I mean, the evolution has just been it's been very organic, very grassroots. It's been amazing. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I'm overwhelmed. I'm amazed.
Well, listen, the hobby's blessed to have you, the organization, and the veterans that get helped by the money raised, right?
Yeah,
Are blessed as well. And like you said, it is a community, right? And we hear all the bad stories in the hobby, right, guys? Where people, you know, whether it's robbing or scamming or trimming or altering, the list goes on, right? And those are real stories, unfortunately, and they need to be talked about, right? But for every one of those bad stories, right, there's 10 good ones. And sometimes
oh,
I don't think, and I try not to be guilty of this, but sometimes I don't think we highlight those good stories enough, especially when they do outnumber the bad. You know, it's like when you turn on the news, right? They always lead with all the negative
I,
stuff
I,
first because
I'm,
it's train wreck mentality. People, for whatever reason, that's just human nature, good or bad. You know, we slow down at a wreck and try to see, and but you know, there's so many good. I don't think across. It's not even just a hobby thing. I just across society. I don't think we cover all the positive stories
yeah,
enough. But you were going to say
yeah.
something.
No, yeah, I was gonna say exactly the same thing. I mean, you watch half an hour of the news, and 25 minutes of it is what's wrong, what's been bad going on, and then there's a 2, 3 minute segment of, oh, hey, here's a little feel good story.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next thing. But yeah, no, I think for me, doing this has really renewed my faith in humanity in terms of just all the great people that I've met who just give very selflessly, and basically they want no recognition in return. They're just like, hey, I just want to be a part of something that's truly making a difference in somebody's life. And I mean, I've had, you know, I think one of my favorite memories from the national. It was the first national that we did in 2018 in Cleveland. We were kind of tucked back in a corner. Nobody really knew us, that type of thing. And going into it, I think I'd raised at that point like $3,200, and we did almost 4,000 that weekend, which I was thrilled with. And I remember this young boy comes up to me with his grandmother, and the kid was probably 7, 8 years old, and he reaches in his pocket and he says, "Here, this is for the soldiers. I hope this helps." And he hands me $1, and it just blew me. It literally brought tears to my eyes. I mean, I'm kind of getting emotional now talking about it, but it was just such a cool experience. Here's this, you know, 8, 10-year-old kid just going, you know what, this is what I can give, and I just want to do something. And it was really amazing. It was really touching.
Yeah, very cool. And again, with that, and deservedly so. That's just no matter how old you are, right? Or whether, and then everyone has or has had at least one family member, if not more, right, serve in the military, or maybe unfortunately, make the ultimate sacrifice as well with with some of the early wars, and um, I come from a military family, so it hits close to home for me. And we forget, we think, I think sometimes we're guilty, not so much me, but I think some people are guilty of, like, they think, well, if you don't get killed in action, which obviously we hope never happens, then you just come home and you're okay, right? We don't realize that there's injuries besides casualties, and where people will lose, unfortunately, limbs and things like that, where mobility becomes an issue. And obviously, what you do can maybe build a ramp or make someone's house accessible
Yeah.
to their disability. And so the ultimate sacrifice isn't always life, but you lose some of your abilities to maybe walk and do certain other things. And
Yeah.
I think
And
sometimes we forget about that aspect of military service.
yeah.
And so
Well, we,
besides the monetary and helping to get some of these things that these folks need, I think it also sheds light on, like, a sacrifice is not just losing your life, but in other forms as well. And I think that's important to know, right? I think sometimes we lose the in between, right? Like, everyone thinks it's just you either get killed serving your country or you don't, and it's not as black and white as that. There's other things, that happen in between, and that money raised goes to do some of that stuff, whether it be a wheelchair ramp. Kind of talk about um, where some of these monies go. And think about this, Tim, and I'm rambling on here, but it's important, right? From that $500 to you're almost up to half a
no,
million
I
bucks.
I was thinking about that today, and I just to even say that out loud is ridiculous. Yeah, you're talking about just we were talking earlier about kind of the news cycle, and it's
Yeah,
you know military veterans, it's not really in the news cycle right now, so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind type thing. And it's I think people think, oh well, they serve in the military, they come out, they have a pension, or the federal government will take care of them or something like that, and that's not always the case. And I think what the other thing that's been really cool for me, and even my wife has talked about this, is how many veterans are in the hobby collecting. And you touched on it, that Signatures for Soldiers has kind of become this platform that allows us, and I use that term very broadly, because anybody that's involved, it allows us to really talk about what the veteran issues are, and keep them at the forefront. And it's amazing. We'll be at a show, and a veteran will come up and, oh, I served in the Army, the Marines, whatever, and then they'll just start to openly kind of talk about either their military experience, or maybe some of the struggles that they've had coming back, and just generally adjusting to non-military life, which which can be very difficult. um, but yeah, as far as the money we've raised, my God, do we have enough time to even talk about how we've used the money? just just this week. Let's start with just this week, because it's fresh in my head. We have paid, let's see, we've paid a security deposit for housing and electric for a veteran who has been homeless and is now getting into affordable housing. So obviously he didn't have the money for the security deposit, or for the electric, or the apartment. So We paid that literally just the other day. So now, literally this weekend, he's going to be housed for the first time in over a year. Um, let's see what else. Oh, we've had two two female veterans who fell behind on their rent. So we brought that current. So we've kept those two ladies and their families from being evicted. Let's see. A veteran needed some help with paying for car repairs. So we paid that. That's just this week. That's just this week. My God, we've done so many other things. We've written out we've written out checks to other small nonprofits that help homeless and disabled veterans that align with us, so they can continue to do their great work. Again, we're getting a lot of requests for paying overdue rent or security deposits. Um, just the 3 weeks ago, we paid the security deposit again for a veteran who was homeless and getting into safe, affordable housing. Um, so literally, as of 2 weeks ago, he's safely housed for the first time in 25 years. And so this guy's been
Wow.
homeless for 25 years.
Wow,
I,
that's
I,
something.
I mean, I, I know for me, and I take this for granted, I've never had to worry about where I'm laying my head or whether or not I'm going to have a roof over my head. I've been extremely blessed. So just to think about something like that, it's like, oh my God, I can't even fathom. We've had a veteran who was paralyzed. Basically, he had his own tree trimming business and fell out of a tree, and basically is paralyzed from chest down. And in order to keep the business, he has to have a specialized off-road wheelchair so he can continue to supervise his crews. So we paid. This was a couple of years ago. We paid for the brand new. Specialized wheelchair for him so he could keep his business and continue to provide for his family. um, we've purchased furniture for formerly homeless veterans who've gotten into safe and affordable housing, because you take somebody who's homeless, put them into a one-bedroom apartment, and all they've really got is clothes on their back and whatever they can carry. And so we've purchased beds, we've purchased couches, pots and pans, gift cards to go food shopping. It's just what we're trying to do is, where one nonprofit ends as far as their services and where another one begins, there's typically a gap in there, and we're trying to fill those gaps. I'm not looking to reinvent the wheel of what's already being done out there, but just to fill the gaps, to bridge them from one to the next. And the like I said, that this everybody wants to thank me for the work that I'm doing, and I just keep saying it's not me, it's all of you. You having me on this show to talk about this and reach one more person who doesn't know about us is huge. This is, I'm
I
able.
appreciate that about you, Tim. You're very you like to spread that credit around. I think that's a testament to the person you are. But listen, right? You're doing a lot, a majority, if not all, like the logistics and the heavy lifting, right? And I know you don't like to pat yourself on your back, so that's where I'll come in and do it for you.
This is where you're going to interrupt me, huh?
Yeah, yeah. This is I've gotten better at this, but I'm going to make an exception here because I know you're sort of being the John Stockton dishing out some credit here, but again, this was your launching, right? And I know there's
Yeah.
you mentioned some other organizations, right? But we're at this point we're talking about Singers for Soldiers. This is what you've built over the past 11 years, right? Again, we've talked about this, right? Uh, uh, all charity is good, right? But some of the times not all the funds go where you think it's going, right? That's not the
Right.
case here. As you stated on this show before, right? You're not taking a paycheck, you have a job. So 100% of what people do give and donate goes to the effort and the cause. And that's not common in most charities, to be blunt honest, and yet it is with signatures. And again, that's hats off to you for doing
Thank
that.
you.
And it's also you're giving of your time, right? It is a lot of work. You may not always say it or advertise that. I know, just from knowing you, you don't do it half-assed. Pardon my language, but you
No,
that's a grind,
no,
right? I just do shows as a dealer, and it's a grind. So you're doing that when you set up at these shows with the signatures for soldiers inventory, the travel,
yeah.
just getting organized when you get stuff sent to you to just kind of put it where it needs to be going to ship out in those cases, right? So there's just so many different things you have to do. It's not like someone just donates $50 and it just goes in the bank account, which is that's great too, but it's not. It's way more than that, as you well know, and certain other people probably do as well. You do that because you want to, because you care, uh, and I think that needs to be mentioned. And I know,
I appreciate
again,
that.
you don't always give yourself a lot of credit, and you're very generous in giving others kudos. But there is no signature. Let's put it this way: signatures for soldiers wouldn't exist without Tim Virgilio. And I know that probably makes you squirt because you don't like to take it, but it is a fact. Like it or
Yeah,
not,
but
it is
it's
it
yeah,
is a fact.
but
And
it's
to
also
think
the
where
amazing
you are,
support too.
11, yes, I agree with you. But 11 years in, like
Yeah.
you know, things don't even a lot of things don't even last 11 years, good and bad. And so that again, that's a testament to perseverance and fortitude and dedication and all those great words that probably uh, don't even just maybe not even strong enough for what you're doing. And it's again, whether whatever political affiliate, this isn't a political thing, right? We've all very few families don't have someone that served in the military to defend our country and our freedoms. And so there's no reason, I think one of the reasons people get behind it is because we can all relate to it, whether it's someone served themselves or a family member, and just the importance of our military to our nation's history, if you
And
will.
and
Uh,
and
you
if
know,
and if you're
Go
in the
ahead.
hobby, I was gonna say, and if you're into the hobby, you get some really cool items from us too. So
Yeah, let's that's a good segue. Let me ask you this before we get
yeah.
into some of the athletes that have sort of jumped on board and more now than ever before. 11 years in, has it got easier, harder? Like, where would
You know,
how would you answer that?
uh, my answer would be yes. It's gotten easier and it's gotten harder.
Yeah.
Um, obviously there's certain day-to-day things, you know how it is. You get into a rhythm of doing it and that part's easy. Um, I think the challenge that I've had is being able to offer new stuff and not just the same kind of recycled stuff, that like if I've had a player who's been signing stuff for me for 10 years, that I don't just have that athlete stuff, but I have other stuff as well, so that's been some of the challenge. Honestly, probably the hardest part for me is the number of requests for assistance that we get, and trying to meet all of those needs with the limited funds that we have. And I mean, there's been times where I've had to say no, I can't help, and that's been hard. So so has it gotten easier? Yes. Has it gotten harder? Yes. A little bit of both. The more that people find out about what Signatures for Soldiers is about, they want us to, come to this show or to come to that show, and I would love to travel the country and do that, but like you said, I've got a full time job that Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, I'm working, and I can only take off so much time from work. So I've got to be very thoughtful about what shows I can go to and don't go to, because again, there's the expenses involved in all of it. But as far as kind of reaching more and more athletes, that's become a little easier, because now it's like anything else. If you came to me and you're like, hey Tim, I vouch for this guy because of my relationship with you, I'd go, oh, okay, John, Billy's a good guy because John says he is, that type of thing. And it's kind of the same thing with the athletes. I've had athletes who have vouched for us, and said, yeah, Signatures for Soldiers, legitimate thing. And we've had people that have jumped on board just simply because of that.
Yeah, and you've had, I mean, I don't, probably too many even to name them all, but as you've built momentum, as this train's gotten rolling, to use an analogy, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're getting more athletes involved, and I think some of that probably comes from the athletes seeing some of their athletes that they know kind of get involved. Like, hey, what can
Yep.
I do, or how do I get involved? So you get some of that momentum. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now more than ever, we have more um, active current athletes in the professional ranks who are on board than we've ever had, and a lot of that has been because they'll see the athlete doing something or maybe wearing one of our hats or one of our shirts, and hey, what's that about? And I think the one example that really just comes to mind, and we've talked about this guy before, Mitch Haninger, who played for the Mariners, um, not this past season, but the season before. Um, he had said to me, he's like, oh, hey, I have a box. It was like every at the end of every off season or end of every season, he would send us a box of his game use cleats that we would sell, and that money would go to help homeless and disabled veterans. And he told me, he's like, yeah, he's like, I've got a box in my locker that I'm putting some cleats in. And he's like, I'll get it out to you. And so he sends it to me, and I open it up, and not only are there cleats from him, but there's cleats from several of his um, his teammates at the time. And I asked him about it, and he said, yeah, he said, guys saw the box in my locker walking by, asking me what that was about, told them what I was doing, and next day they were coming by and dropping their own cleats in there. So, so you definitely, so again, I think that's a great example of, somebody vouching for Signatures for Soldiers and just seeing that snowball effect. So it's been really amazing. And, I use the word humbling a lot, because it is. It's humbling. I'm I'm just a guy. I'm not really that special, but here are people that are just getting behind this, and it's awesome. I become speechless when I really start thinking about it.
Yeah, and we all just people, right? But you chose to take this on, and not only to do it right, but to do it in the fashion you're doing it. And we've seen some hobby entities get behind it, whether it's a podcast, the national, like you said, allowing you set up. I know you were the official charity of the national more than once. I think two or three times, and I'd like to see. It's easy for me to say, Tim, but I'll say it right. I'd like to see. I think there's more. Like there's more
Yeah,
meat on that bone, hobby wise, right? Just like a lot of athletes are getting involved, and like you, in Mitch Haniker's case, you like even his teammates say, "Hey, let me add to your box that you're going to send," right? I like to see maybe some more hobby companies, whether that be supply companies, whether that be the big time manufacturers themselves, the Fanatics slash Tops,
yeah,
Panini, and others. Sort of get involved. And I know I don't want to make it like they're doing nothing for charity. They all usually do something, but maybe more for a charity that is sort of uh, hobby centered, hobby based. Um,
yeah.
it's right in their own backyard, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, is that something? Is that something you hope happens? Is it
Oh,
something that you reach out, or have there's been? I don't want to, you don't have to give away everything that goes on, but is that something you've sent feelers out there, or laid some of the groundwork? I'll let
yeah,
you answer that.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that's one thing that I've really worked hard at is the relationship building. Since uh, it, probably since 2018, I've spent very little money on hobby supplies because Ultra Pro and BCW have gotten behind us and have sent us stuff as we've needed it, which has been great. Because obviously that really cuts down on administrative expenses, and that just means okay, they hypothetically they send me $20 worth of supplies. That's $20 that I can turn around and help get a gift card for a veteran who's kind of struggling month to month just to eat, or it's something like that. So like those two companies have been really good. Heritage Auctions, we've gotten into a routine now where kind of every August they're running an auction for us where literally they're waiving all the fees for us, so all the money comes back to us. We've done that the last couple of years, and that alone every year raises $25,000 in and of itself, which is huge. Tops has helped us in the past. I'm trying to think who else. I know I'm leaving out companies, but yeah, and then there's dealers. That have helped us with donating product for us to either sell or auction off or things like that. So yeah, if any of those companies, any of the big companies, any of the smaller companies, I mean, pretty much anytime anybody approaches me and says, hey, how can we help, we want to get involved, we definitely start to have some conversations that way so that we can figure out what works best for everybody involved. Here locally in Texas, there's a gentleman who puts together a show twice a year, and he's like Tim. He's like he's like every show I have two tables set aside for you, no charge. Just get here and set up and do your thing. So like even just things like that, and the guy's probably, I mean, I don't know how much he charges for tables, but I mean, the price of tables at card shows, they can be anywhere from $75 up, depending on the show. So I mean, even just
That
gestures
and
like
and
that.
that and there's never empties because there's usually a waiting list of
Yep.
dealers who want to get in, right? So
Yep.
for that promoter to say, "Hey, Tim, you have two with your name on it,"
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
testament
So
to
it's,
him that that's something he cares about and
yeah.
knows is important. But I just kind of wanted to chime in there, with
But
that.
yeah, but but yeah, back to your point, the hobby make is how many billions of dollars in the hobby every year, and I half joke and say, okay, if company A gave us a percent of a percent of that would basically be pennies on the dollar for them, but would make a huge difference in the work that we do. So yeah, I'm always trying to build those relationships. Always trying to
and and
gain
and
more support.
and not that this should be the reason they do it, Tim, as you well know, but it's also a tax write-off for their books as well.
Yep,
That
absolutely.
shouldn't be the leading factor, but it's a benefit
It
that
helps.
yeah, it's a fringe benefit for them as well as doing something good for the community, the hobby, and veterans who served our country that we get to enjoy all these freedoms like going to a card show or
Yep.
opening a pack of cards and that those sort of things. So yeah. So I again, there's always room for more or even more long term, right? Hey, we're just on board
Yeah.
until if we don't exist anymore. That's one thing, but as long as we exist, this is what we're willing to do, right? And you mentioned Ultra Pro and BCW. Anyone that collects knows supplies can get add up as you need them, and so that again helps. Helps you out with obviously those have to be in sleeves and top loaders for presentation purposes. How much, obviously, like we talked about, you have a 9 to 5 job. What I know you probably again not to pat yourself on the back, but this needs to I'll do it for you in a sense by
Okay.
asking how much, what kind of hours are you putting in outside of your regular job. I guess every week's different. Maybe you don't do a
Yeah.
show one week, you do a show another, but on average, what kind of time are you spending outside of your own
Yeah.
job with the
Yeah.
organization?
Probably, evenings. I'm probably doing, 2 to 3 hours a night on average, and then weekends just obviously depends on what's going on. I mean, there's some Saturdays I could spend an entire day putting in work, and that can be lots of different things, whether it's being at a show or just organizing or listing or like you talked about earlier, packaging stuff up, getting it ready to mail out, things like that. But if I had to guess, I mean, I hate to think about it in this way because I've always said, I'll do this as long as it's fun. When it starts becoming work is when I'm gonna call it a day. But I mean, on average, I probably 20 hours minimum a week. And I hate to think about that because then it's like, ooh, well, that's kind of a part-time job. But
Gonna say that's half of a 40-hour work
yeah,
week, right?
yeah,
Well,
yeah. But if I'm not doing that, then I'm probably doing something I probably shouldn't be doing. So
and for you, like it's a labor of love, right?
it
You're
is. It is.
passionate about it. You love doing it. You love helping folks, and again, that's kudos to you. But I wanted to highlight that because
Appreciate that.
I know you don't necessarily. You're not gonna, go on the mountaintop and scream that out. But I think, you know, that's important to note that the work you do and the time and the commitment you have to it. And I want to. The other thing, you're now in Texas, as you mentioned. You
Right.
were in Florida, and you yourself had a couple unfortunately, with weather related and flooding and some damage. I mean, just kind of, and yet you're still, you got through that and still, someone else might have said, you know what, I got so much on my plate with my own stuff and these bad things happen. I got to stop doing this. I can't do
Yeah.
it anymore. And again, testament to you. You got through some of these hardships, if you will, and Signatures for Soldiers didn't have to suffer so to speak. Kind of talk about some of that with living in Florida at the time and kind of the move to Texas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like anybody else. I mean, life happens.
Yeah,
It's like if I think back on it, over 11 years, between my wife's family and my family and friends. I mean, we've unfortunately, have lost probably a good dozen or so people over that time. We were living in Florida for 7 years, and in the last 4 years that we were there, our house flooded 3 times. With the last time putting 3 feet of water in our house, so that kind of became the proverbial straw, and it was just time to move on. So we went. So then, basically, from September to January, we were kind of nomadic, living in a VRBO for 30 days, and then living an apartment with the bare minimum and furnishings, the rest of the time, and then moving to Texas, just to get out of the path of the hurricanes. It just became too much, but I'm blessed probably more than I deserve to be, and God's been good to me and to my wife, and we just want to continue to pay it forward, and this is our way to do that. I want for nothing. Um, it's kind of like today. We were doing some stuff, and my wife was like, what would be good? Let's stop and get a milkshake. I think we deserve a milkshake. Like I didn't have to think about, well, can I afford the milkshake, or anything like that. And it's so yeah, and that was really, I think what really, my wife and I have always been on the giving end, not the receiving end. And this last time when our house flooded and basically was a total loss, we had so many people, not just family and friends, but people that really only know me through Signatures for Soldiers, to say, what can we do to help you in your time of need? And um, it I mean, just I'm just talking about it now. I mean, I'm tearing up now because I'm just so moved by it. Just so many people were like, you've done so much for others. We want to help you, and um, that was just something my wife and I are just so grateful for.
no, it's awesome. I'll give you a second here, and I'll kind of interject. And even hearing you, something that if you don't know what kind of person Tim is, right? Some of the stuff you went through, like you said, with losses, flooding, not once or twice, but 3 times. And when I saw that, we're Facebook friends, so I saw
Yeah.
that, and I just said, man, like this is horrible. Like someone who's so giving of themselves, and yet, you know even people of the strongest, where I'm going with this, even people of the strongest faith, and I'm a person of faith, would have a hard time. Some of that faith will get shooken. Let me put it that way. Uh, when stuff like that happens that often, and yet hearing you say like how blessed you are and fortunate, like that's again, that's a testament to who you are, and your wife as well, right? Where someone else would maybe even blame God or say like, you know, is there a God like with this stuff at like, you
Right.
know, but yet your faith so strong that you find the good even in moments like that, and it's tough, no doubt. But I mean that's a lot of other people wouldn't be like that. I guess is the short way of saying
Yeah,
what I
I
did.
mean, we've come out on the other side of the storm, literally and figuratively, and we're stronger and we're better for it. And my wife and I, anytime we really start to get into a funk, we remind each other, there's people out there that would trade their problems for ours in a heartbeat. That our problems are not as bad. Like talking about, homeless veterans. Tonight, I have I'm not even thinking about where I'm laying my head because I know it's going to be in my bed, on my pillow, under my roof. Um, it- Life isn't that bad. I'm pretty darn blessed. So it's yeah, a lot of things are perspective. It's easy to it's very easy to get dragged down. It's hard to pull yourself up, and but you become stronger for it. And I think just to see the hobby community rally behind my wife and I, um, that did more for me than I think people will ever know. And I almost feel like I owe it to everybody else to keep going. I owe it to everybody in the hobby to keep this thing going. Because there were so many people that just, I had people that were living in Florida driving 2-3 hours just to help my wife come and clean up our house. And I mean, I never met them prior to that. And they're like, you needed help? I'm here. What do you need me to do? And it's just such a blessing. It's, and this is what I'm talking about is that, how this has just become a community. It's become a community that just cares about one another.
Yeah, there's never enough. Even though there's a lot, there's never enough. And
Yeah.
I think you're a great spokesman for that with what you're doing with Signature Soldiers. And I don't, I know you said, well, people may be helping you. I think people, I think human nature, at least for most, is to try to help try to help others, but sometimes it's easier said than done, right? Or people will talk sometimes a good game, but when it comes to action, it's a different story. So the fact that, like you said, people will drive a couple hours to help out, never met you in person per se, again, it's a testament to human goodness, and that there's people are real, like yourself, and that's important. I think that's important, and like you said, kind of helps you to keep going as well, right? That stuff is, you can be inspired, you can inspire others, and you can be inspired yourself all at the
Absolutely.
same time.
Yeah.
And I know that I speak to that myself, and it's important, right? We need those, we need that in our lives. There's no, should be no shortage of people willing to do that. As the organization has grown, has your has the like the space that you that of all this stuff, talk about the space when you first started, and I guess the space 11 years in.
Yeah, the space, I guess, when I started was, a handful of 5,000 count boxes in a spare closet. Now, we have to rent a 10 by 10 storage unit to keep overflow of stuff. I have one room in our house that's dedicated to just signatures for soldiers. So it's kind of my own little mini man cave, kind of like yours there. I've got the TV set up so I can listen to music or watch a game while I'm doing stuff. I've got two or three desks in there for all the space that I need. The closet's full of cards that are signed and unsigned and stuff that needs to be sorted and all the supplies and so yeah, it's become quite a production. like you said, 11 years ago, man, this was not what I had envisioned. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, I used to get stuff together and then I'd have to go to the post office, weigh it, pay for it, and all. Now I've got the online account. I've got my own scale. I'm going to the post office just to drop stuff off. You know, yeah, it's like I said, it's just wild when I really stop and think about it, and just how much it has grown is really amazing.
Yeah, well, listen, it's amazing, because you're doing, yeoman's work and putting in, like you said, 20 hours in addition to your regular job, and not a lot of people, you know, can keep up to. Maybe they could start it right, but to keep up that sort of pace and to do it for as long as you're doing it and continuing to do it right. That my hats off. I'm not wearing a hat, but my
I
hats off to you, Tim. And
appreciate
I
that,
know
Jeff.
I've said that to you before, but
Yeah.
I don't think it can be said enough. How you talked about setting up at shows. How many on average now per year? Like how many shows do you get to as
Um,
part of Signatures for
Yeah,
Soldiers?
probably doing like 6 shows a year now, counting the national. Obviously, the national is the show for us. That's our biggest fundraiser every year. The last couple of years, we're bringing in $50,000 to $60,000, which is probably about 2/3 of our um, fundraising every year, and so that's far and away our biggest one. But otherwise, the shows that I do are just local shows. When we were in Florida, I was doing local shows there. Now that we're here in Texas and kind of getting settled in, I talked about the one at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame in Waco that we do, and then looking to get connected with some other ones. Going to look into possibly trying to get connected with the Dallas show, because I'm only a couple hours from there. And there's a big one in Austin. I'm only an hour from there. So, so there's definitely kind of local shows that I can do on a weekend without having to take time off and travel the country and that type of thing. There's definitely some big shows that I would love to do at some point. We just have to figure out the logistics on that. So
Yeah, no, and listen, you're in. You don't need me to tell you this with Texas. There's a lot of hobby. Especially I know you're not in Dallas, but at least the same state. Dallas is a hobby hotbed. You
yeah,
mentioned the Dallas Card Show. That's a lot of people argue it's the second biggest show, or arguably the second biggest show after the National,
yeah,
or in one of the biggest shows in the country. With the National being sort of the Super Bowl, the hobby, you take that
right,
out. The
right.
Dallas is a huge show in its own right. So, um,
Yeah, there,
you,
there's so many great regional shows now. Like I don't ever remember a time like this. The Anaheim show, the Las Vegas show, there's just so many, and
Yeah,
it's
and
really
even in
cool.
cities, small little cities and towns that never had shows before. I can tell you here in New York, I'm in central New York, and we're getting shows in cities you would have never even thought about there being a
Yeah,
show there. So
yeah, yeah.
there's
I
definitely
mean,
yeah,
that's just a testament to how the hobby
yeah,
has grown in popularity, and yeah, you find shows all over the place, large and small, and
yeah,
sometimes the smaller shows are some of the best shows.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. So, um, well, Tim, I appreciate you. You're working 60 hours a week. You make some time for us. I know that's not
Of
always
course.
easy, and you already know how I feel about you and signatures for soldiers, and I look forward to the national myself, for obvious reasons, but also getting to see, giving you a hug and talking with you in person as well, and it's just it's one of those inspiring hobby stories that sometimes we don't talk enough about them. So anytime, I've tried to have um, those kind of folks on to highlight them, highlight what they're doing because it's so important and just it's not even necessarily a hobby thing. I know it's hobby based, but just important to humans, right? The human community, not just the hobby community, but us as a whole, and especially when it comes to people who have, uh, given to this country in more ways than one. And we talk about some of the physical stuff, but it's even more than physical. People who've served, some of the things they may have seen, or coming back to society, and it's difficult. Sometimes it's easier said than done, and so the fact that your organization can help those folks, like you talk about having a roof over your head, and hearing someone, someone who served this country, not having one of those for 25 years, that shouldn't happen.
No,
I'll
no, it's yeah. I think in doing this, I think the one thing I've heard that has moved me the most, and both in good and bad sense of that phrase, is when a veteran says to me, I thought nobody cared. I didn't think anybody cared about me. And that, I mean, that just kind of sums it up, how some of these men and women feel after they get out of the service, that they're just tossed aside and nobody cares about them. And you know I've talked about Signatures for Soldiers being a community, and John, you've been a huge part of that for 7 years. From day one, you and I met, and I'm very grateful for your support and you continuing to help us get the word out there. And I'm blessed to be able to call you a friend. And I will always make time for you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. Likewise, and I'm not going to take a lot of credit for that because here's why, Tim. Because I think it's easy to get behind something that's so great, right? That's easy, and I think more people should do it. So I'm not gonna, really pat myself on the back. And I've said this to you on air, off air. Um, you always have a place on this podcast, on the show. Anything it
Appreciate
can, I don't want to even make it just like anything we can do, I can do. It doesn't even have to be like you said in view. We don't have to do, Uh, that's nice too, but that's not why you should do it. You should do it because you care. And again, I'm not saying I care just because of this. I care regardless of this fact. But coming from a family that's had a lot of military personnel who served, current and past, um, I think it's important. And I think you mentioned how the one soldier said like they felt forgotten, right? First of all, it shouldn't be the case, but I get that, and I think a lot of people, there's a misperception that when a soldier retires or is out of the military, they're taken care of, and that's not the way people think. And there's people fall through gaps. Some of the funds that you think they're not getting, or not enough, or not what they're entitled to, and that's a whole show in itself. But so it's not easy, that transition post service career. Even when there's not injuries or stresses or trauma involved, and then you add in those factors, even more so, and the fact that you're there for those people so they're not forgotten like that. Again, is a testament to Signatures for Soldiers, Tim Virgilio, and what you guys do. So it's easy for me to say, what can we do, or come on whenever you want to. I should be saying that. I'm not going to take. I'm not going to
you know,
take any credit.
yeah.
I appreciate you saying that and saying thank you, but that's what I should be doing, and it's easy to do. It's not hard for me to do.
And
So
and you
um,
know what's really cool, if we really pause and think about this, we're literally changing lives for the better by using pieces of cardboard. I
yeah,
mean, how crazy is that?
yeah,
You know?
and it can get and it can get bigger and better, and we can get more people hopefully involved. And like you said, even when you think even a dollar, right? That young man that gave a buck. Um, I mean, it don't matter how old you are. You know how important uh, this is, and so even
Yeah.
some of these other companies, right? And the hobby's
Well,
so big and yet so small, right? With social
it is.
media,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, people are in other countries communicating and dealing and wheeling and all that stuff. So even 11 years in, as much as you've grown over the like, there's more. As long as you're willing to keep doing it and keep going, right? That's it. You're gonna get bigger and better. And again, I know you don't give yourself credit, but I'll give you that.
Thank you.
And the hobby too, right? We all trying to do, or majority of us are trying to do good things, and like you said, to get to enjoy this great hobby and help others at the same time. I mean, what else do you need to say? Like, if you
Yeah.
can't get behind that,
Yeah. And
um,
and I
that's
can't
a
get in
you
trouble with
problem. That's a
and
them or you problem that don't, right?
yeah,
And
and I can't get in trouble with my wife when stuff shows up at the house because I go, It's for the charity," It's
there you go. Two birds, one stone, as they
exactly,
say.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So, but
Tim,
yeah,
listen again. We know how busy you are, and you make some time. And I know I've said it before, but this door is always open. You just say
thanks.
when and what you want to do, and we'll get behind it. And easy to do.
I
Again,
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
easy and as it should be, and we need more of that. So for those who are interested, kind of give out websites, social
Sure.
media, anything you want to share for those who maybe want to jump on board
Yeah.
and do their part.
Yeah, definitely check us out more. Our website, signatures, the number four soldiers.com, is our website. You can kind of read up more about what we're doing and all of that. I put out a monthly email with updates of kind of what's happening, things like that. So you can always sign up for that through the website. Social media, Facebook. Instagram and X. You can find us there. Just search signatures for soldiers, FOR soldiers, and you can follow, give us a like, give us a follow, and then if you want to reach out to me via email, it's signatures for FOR soldiers at yahoo.com. Feel free to email me and let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you'd like to see us do. Let me know if you want to help get involved. We always take donations of any kind, monetary and non-monetary. If you have, if you're one of these people that just breaks packs after packs and you have a bunch of base cards that you're not really sure what to do with, we take that and we can either get them signed or turn them into money that we can use to help homeless and disabled veterans. So lots of different ways to get involved.
Yeah, and I'll put a lot of that stuff in the show notes, folks. So even if it'll be there, just check out the episode notes and you can get
Awesome.
redirected there. So we'll make sure to get that in the show notes as well, Tim. So easy to do and easy to click and then get to where they need to go and be a part of a growing community and an important community, helping great people who help this great country, right? And it's our turn to reciprocate that love for country, love for them, right? Sometimes I get it that they feel. I think sometimes certain people we kind of take for granted some of that stuff sometimes. I think we're all at some point or another can fall into that category, but you can always do something, like you said. Even a dollar, all those add up. A dollar here, a
Absolutely.
dollar there, together as a community, that number gets big. And here you are, like that's even thinking about it, almost at $500,000.
That's great.
You know, that's awesome. And again, you deserve a lot of. I know you're not doing it for this reason, but you deserve a lot of that credit. So
Thanks,
you
John.
know, so all right, thanks, Tim. Well, again, we'll do it again, but
Yes, sir.
I,
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, but likewise.